My name is Marshall. I am 57 years old. I just got back from burying the only man in my family who ever truly believed in me, my Uncle Earl. And when I walked through my son's front door that evening, still wearing my black suit, still carrying the weight of that casket on my shoulders, I told them the news. I inherited 3 farms. The look on their faces changed everything. But it was not the kind of change you would expect. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you are watching from today. Drop your location in the comments, hit that like button and subscribe if you have not already, because this story is one you are going to want to hear all the way through. Let me take you back to where it all started, because you need to understand who I am before you can understand what was done to me. I grew up in a small town just outside of Knoxville, Tennessee, the kind of place where everybody knew your name, where the grocery store owner would let your mama run a tab if times got rough, and where the church bells on Sunday morning were the only alarm clock you ever needed. It was simple. It was honest. And for a while, it was enough. My father passed away when I was 14. Heart attack. Dropped right there on the factory floor during a double shift. No warning, no goodbye. Just a phone call to my mother at 6:30 in the morning that split our lives clean in half. Before that call, we were a family. After it, we were survivors. My mother, God rest her soul, picked up the pieces the only way she knew how. She took on 2 shifts at the food packing plant on Route 9. Morning shift started at 4 a.m. Night shift did not end until 11. I would hear her come through the front door smelling like cold metal and plastic wrap. Her hands swollen, her eyes barely open. She never complained. Not once. She just kept going because she had me and my younger sister Corinne depending on her. I dropped out of school at 17. Not because I wanted to, but because the electric company does not care about your report card. They care about the check. So I picked up a wrench and started working as a plumber's apprentice for a man named Gil Henderson. Gil was rough around the edges, but fair. He taught me how to sweat copper pipes, how to fix a leaking valve in the dark, and how to show up on time, even when your body was begging you to stay in bed. After about 5 years with Gil, I moved into maintenance work for a property management company. The pay was a little better. The hours were worse. 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. Crawling under houses, fixing furnaces in the dead of winter, replacing rooftop units in the July heat when the air up there felt like the inside of an oven. I did that for over 30 years. Now let me tell you about the best thing that ever happened to me. Her name was Linda. I met her at a 4th of July cookout when I was 22. She was a nurse at the county hospital, had this warm laugh that could fill up an entire backyard, and she looked at me like I was somebody worth looking at. We got married the following spring. I was 23. She was 21. We did not have much, but we had each other, and back then that felt like more than enough. A few years later, our son Derek came along. Born on a Tuesday morning in March when the dogwoods were just starting to bloom. I remember holding him for the first time, this tiny red-faced little thing screaming his lungs out, and thinking to myself, I will do whatever it takes to give this boy a better life than I had. And I meant it. Every single word. I worked overtime so Derek could go to a good school. I drove a beat-up truck for 12 years so we could put money aside for his future. When he turned 16, I bought him a used sedan with cash I had been saving in a coffee can in the garage. When he got into college, Linda and I took out every spare dollar we had to help cover what the scholarships did not. We never once hesitated. That is what parents do. Or at least that is what I believed parents do. Then Linda got sick. It started with stomach pain she kept brushing off as stress. By the time they ran the tests, the cancer had already spread to her pancreas and liver. Stage 4. The doctors gave her 4 to 6 months. She lasted 5. Derek was 22 years old the night his mother passed away in that hospital bed, holding my hand on one side and his on the other. I will not lie to you. I fell apart after that. The house felt like a museum of memories I could not escape. Her coffee mug still on the counter, her reading glasses on the nightstand, the lavender lotion she used every night still sitting on the bathroom shelf, slowly drying out, just like everything else she left behind. I sold the house. I could not stay there. I moved into a small one-bedroom apartment on the east side of town and used the extra money from the sale to help Derek put a down payment on his first home. He had just started working at a logistics company, and I wanted to make sure he had a solid foundation. That is what Linda would have wanted too. Now there is one more person you need to know about before we go any further. My Uncle Earl. Earl was my father's older brother. He never married, never had children of his own. He lived alone on a stretch of farmland outside of Nashville that had been in our family for 3 generations. Earl was the kind of man who said more with silence than most people say with 100 words. He was tall, lean, weathered by decades of sun and wind, with hands like leather and eyes that missed absolutely nothing. After my father died, Earl became the closest thing I had to a father figure. He did not hover. He did not lecture. He just showed up. A phone call here. A birthday card there, always handwritten in that shaky cursive of his. And as I got older, I made it a point to visit him every month. 3-hour drive each way. I would help him mend fences, clean out the barn patch, the roof when the storms came through. And afterward, we would sit on his front porch, drinking sweet tea, watching the sun go down behind the tree line, not saying much at all. We did not need to. The silence between us was the kind that only comes from 2 people who genuinely care about each other. Earl was the only family I had left who made me feel like I mattered. Not for what I could give, but for who I was. And for a long time I thought I had built something solid in my own life too. A son who loved me. A future with grandchildren. A quiet retirement spent surrounded by the people I had sacrificed everything for. But then Derek brought home a woman named Jolene. And everything I thought I knew about my own family started to crumble. Derek met Jolene at some kind of networking event his company hosted downtown. He called me that night, voice all lit up like a kid on Christmas morning, going on about this incredible woman he had just met. She worked in real estate, he said. Smart, ambitious, well-dressed. He could not stop talking about her. They dated for 8 months before he proposed. I did not get much time with Jolene during that stretch. A few phone calls, one quick lunch where she spent most of the time checking her phone. But Derek was happy, and I told myself that was all that mattered. The first time I really sat down with Jolene was the night Derek brought her over for dinner at my apartment. I spent all afternoon cooking Linda's beef stew. It was the recipe she made every Sunday, the one Derek grew up eating. Thick, rich, slow, cooked with rosemary and red wine. I set the table with the good plates, the ones I had kept from the old house, and I even put out a small vase of wildflowers because that is what Linda always did when company came over. Jolene walked in, looked around the apartment, and I watched her eyes do that thing people do when they are measuring a place against their expectations and finding it short. She smiled, but the smile did not quite reach all the way up. Then she started asking questions. So this is where you have been living all these years. Derek mentioned you used to own a bigger house. Do you rent or own this place? Each question wrapped in politeness, like a razor blade tucked inside a greeting card. I answered honestly. Yes, I rent. Yes, I used to own a house. I sold it after my wife passed. The money went to help Derek. Jolene nodded slowly the way someone nods when they are filing information away for later. Then she turned to the stew, took one small bite, and said it was interesting. That was the word she used. Interesting. Not good. Not delicious. Interesting. I told myself I was being too sensitive. My son had found someone he loved. That should have been enough. The wedding was a modest affair at a vineyard about an hour outside the city. I was not involved in the planning. Jolene's mother handled most of it. I was asked to wear a specific color suit, show up at a specific time, and sit in a specific seat. I did all three without complaint. During the reception, I tried to give a toast, but the DJ said the schedule was tight and they needed to move on to the first dance. I put my note card back in my pocket and clapped along with everyone else. After the wedding, the distance started. Not all at once. It crept in slowly, the way cold air slides under a door in winter. You do not notice it at first, but eventually the whole room is freezing. Derek used to call me 3 or 4 times a week. Just quick calls to check in, tell me about his day, ask how I was doing. After the wedding, those calls dropped to once a week. Then every 2 weeks. Then only when he needed something. And every conversation ended the same way. Jolene is calling me, gotta go, Dad. Click. Silence. That first Thanksgiving after the wedding, I was invited to their house for dinner. I was grateful for that. I spent the morning baking a pecan pie from Linda's recipe. Toasted pecans, real butter, dark corn syrup, a pinch of bourbon in the filling, just the way she made it. I drove 45 minutes to their place, walked in with that pie held out like an offering, and handed it to Jolene with a smile. She took it, said, "No." "Oh, thanks," and set it on the far end of the kitchen counter behind the coffee maker next to a stack of napkins. Then she pointed to the dining table and said, "We ordered pies from that new French bakery on 5th Street. Everyone has been raving about them." I sat through that whole dinner watching people eat bakery pies, while mine sat untouched in the corner, slowly going cold. Nobody mentioned it. Not even Derek. When the night ended, I wrapped the pie back up and took it home. I ate a slice alone in my apartment that night, standing at the kitchen counter, and I am not ashamed to tell you it tasted exactly like Linda's. As the months went on, I started noticing a pattern in Jolene's conversations with me. They always circled back to money. Not in an obvious way, mind you. She was clever about it. "Have you thought about your retirement plan?" "Dad, do you have any investments, or is it just the apartment? What does your pension look like? Is it enough to live on?" I answered every question the same way. Honestly, I told her I had my pension, a small savings account, and the apartment. Nothing fancy. Nothing worth getting excited about. And every time I answered, I watched something in her expression shift, like a door closing behind her eyes. From that point on, her interest in me dropped off a cliff. The invitations became less frequent. The phone calls from Derek became even shorter. And whenever I did see them, Jolene would greet me with the kind of smile you give a neighbor you do not particularly like, but have to be polite to. I started to feel like a guest in my own son's life. Not even a welcome one. More like someone who shows up without an invitation, and everyone is too polite to ask to leave. But I kept telling myself I was overthinking it. I kept saying maybe she was just busy, maybe I was too old-fashioned, maybe this is just how families work now. I made excuses for them the way you make excuses for people you love, even when the evidence is stacking up against them. 6 months after the wedding, Derek called me on a Wednesday evening. His voice was different, lighter, almost giddy. He said, "Dad, Jolene is pregnant. You are going to be a grandfather." I cannot describe to you what those words did to me. It was like someone turned a light on in a room that had been dark for years. I hung up the phone and just sat there in my recliner, grinning like a fool, tears rolling down my face. A grandchild, a new life, a chance to pour all the love I had been storing up into someone small and new. I drove to the hardware store the very next morning. I bought oak planks, wood glue, sandpaper, and 4 different grits, and a set of carving tools I had been eyeing for months. For the next 3 weeks, every evening after work, I went into my little storage unit in the apartment building's basement, and I built a crib. By hand, piece by piece. I sanded every surface until it was smooth enough for a baby's skin. I carved scrollwork into the headboard and footboard, nothing fancy, just simple flowing vines. And on the inside rail where a little head would rest, I carved 5 words, "Welcome to the world, little one." I drove it over to Derek's house on a Saturday morning, the crib wrapped in a moving blanket in the back of my truck. It took me 15 minutes to carry it inside by myself because Derek was not home. Jolene opened the door in her bathrobe, looked at the crib, ran her hand along the top rail and said, "Oh, that is sweet. But we already ordered one from Barrett and Cole. Their cribs meet all the current safety standards. You know how it is these days, everything has to be certified." She said it with a smile, the kind of smile that is designed to make you feel like you cannot argue back without looking unreasonable. "But thank you," she added. "Really." I left the crib in their living room, told her I understood, and drove home. 2 weeks later, I stopped by to drop off some baby clothes I had picked up at a shop downtown. Derek let me in, and while he went to get a glass of water, I noticed the door to the garage was cracked open. I glanced in, and there it was. My crib. Shoved into the corner of the garage between a stack of moving boxes and an old exercise bike covered in a thin layer of dust. Right next to a pile of things labeled "Donation" in black marker on a strip of masking tape. I closed the garage door quietly and did not say a word. The baby arrived in September. A boy. They named him Graham. I called Derek that evening to congratulate them and ask when I could come see my grandson. Jolene answered the phone instead. She said they were not taking visitors for a while. The baby needed rest. The pediatrician recommended a quiet environment for the first few weeks. I said I understood. I waited. 2 weeks passed. I called again. Jolene said they were adjusting to a new feeding schedule, and it was not a good time. 3 weeks after that, I called once more. This time she said Graham had a slight cold, and they were being cautious. Could I try again next month? It took me nearly 2 months to hold my own grandson for the first time. And when I finally did, I was allowed to stay for 45 minutes. Jolene stood nearby the entire time, watching, occasionally saying things like, "Support his neck a little more," and "He gets fussy if you bounce him too much." I held that baby boy against my chest and felt his heartbeat against mine. And even with all the awkwardness in that room, it was the most peaceful 45 minutes I had experienced since Linda died. Before I left that day, I made an offer. I said, "You two must be exhausted. How about I come by a couple times a week and watch Graham so you can get some rest or go out for dinner?" Jolene did not even pause. "That is so generous, but we have already hired a professional nanny. She is certified in infant CPR and early development. We want to make sure Graham gets the best care." I nodded. Then I heard Derek's voice from the hallway, soft and careful. "Maybe Dad could help sometimes too?" And Jolene's reply came right back. Not quite a whisper, not quite full volume, but loud enough to reach me in the living room. "Derek, your father lives in a tiny apartment and works as a maintenance man. I want professional care for Graham." The room went quiet. Derek did not respond. I picked up my jacket, said goodbye to Graham in his new Barrett and Cole crib, and drove home. During all of this, the one constant in my life was Uncle Earl. Every month, rain or shine, I made that 3-hour drive out to his place. Earl was getting slower by then, 83 years old, moving carefully, the way old men do when they know their bones are not as forgiving as they used to be. But his mind was sharp as ever. I would sit on that porch with him, and sometimes the whole visit would pass with barely a dozen sentences between us. But on the days when I needed to talk, Earl listened. I told him about Jolene, about Derek pulling away, about the crib in the garage and the pie nobody touched. Earl sat there in his rocking chair, nodding slowly, staring out at the fields. And one afternoon, after I had finished telling him about being shut out from Graham's first weeks, Earl set down his tea glass, looked at me with those clear blue eyes, and said something I have never forgotten. The people who love you for what you have will leave when you have nothing. The people who love you for who you are will stay even when you have everything. I nodded and told him I appreciated that. But at the time I did not fully grasp what he was trying to tell me. I would understand later. Much later. When it was almost too late. Uncle Earl passed away on a Tuesday morning in the middle of October. Went to sleep the night before, and simply did not wake up. 84 years old. The hospital called me at 6:15 a.m., and I was in my truck by 6:20 driving west through a cold rain that did not let up for the entire 3 hours. When I got to the hospital, they led me to a small room where Earl was lying on a bed covered with a white sheet up to his chest. He looked peaceful. Smaller than I remembered somehow, the way people look when the life has gone out of them and all that is left is the body they used to carry it in. I pulled a chair up next to the bed, sat down and held his hand. It was already cool. I stayed there for a long time. I did not rush. Nobody told me I had to leave, and even if they had, I would not have listened. I talked to him. I know that sounds strange, talking to a man who cannot hear you anymore. But I told him thank you. For the birthday cards, for the porch conversations, for the sweet tea and the silence and the feeling of being seen. I told him he was the last of his kind in our family, and I promised I would not let the things he taught me die with him. Then I drove to the funeral home and began making arrangements. I kept the service small. Earl was never one for crowds. I found a spot at the cemetery next to where his parents were buried under a wide oak tree with branches that spread out like open arms. I picked out a simple headstone. No frills. Just his name, his years, and a single line he once told me he liked from an old hymn, "I once was lost, but now am found." I called Derek that evening to let him know about the funeral. He answered on the 4th ring. I could hear Jolene's voice in the background, something about a dinner reservation. "Dad, I am really sorry about Uncle Earl. That is tough." "The funeral is Saturday at 10 a.m., I said. "It would mean a lot to me if you were there." There was a pause. The kind of pause that tells you the answer before the words come. "I will try, Dad. Jolene has a work event on Friday night, and Graham has had a runny nose all week. Let me see what I can work out." Saturday came. I stood at that cemetery in my black suit, the autumn wind pulling at my tie, surrounded by 7 people. Earl's neighbor, Tom Gallagher, and his wife. The woman who ran the feed store where Earl bought his supplies for 40 years. A couple from Earl's church. The funeral director. And me. Derek did not come. I got the text message while the pastor was reading from Psalms. My phone buzzed in my breast pocket, and I knew even before I looked what it would say. "Jolene is not feeling well, and Graham still has a cold. Sorry, Dad. Send me the details later." I read those words standing 10 feet from the casket of the man who had been more of a father to me than anyone else on earth. I put the phone back in my pocket, bowed my head, and let the pastor finish. After the service, after the last handshake and the last "sorry for your loss," I got a phone call from a man named Howard Pennington. He introduced himself as Earl's attorney and asked if I could come by his office in Nashville the following Monday. I said I would be there. That Monday, I sat in a brown leather chair across from Howard Pennington in an office that smelled like old paper and coffee. Howard was a tall man, early 70s, with reading glasses that sat low on his nose and a voice that sounded like it had read 1,000 wills. He opened a folder on his desk and began. "Mr. Marshall, your Uncle Earl prepared his estate documents with great care. He updated them just 14 months ago, fully sound of mind, with 2 witnesses present." Howard explained that Earl owned 3 separate parcels of agricultural land outside of Nashville. The first was a 200-acre crop farm leased to a family that had been growing soybeans and corn on it for the past 12 years. The second was a 150-acre cattle ranch with fenced pastures and a working barn. The third was a 100-acre property with rolling hills, a natural spring-fed lake, and a small farmhouse that Earl had built himself in the 1970s. Total acreage 450 acres. Estimated combined value just over $3 million. All of it left to me. Howard slid a sealed envelope across the desk. "He also left you this." I opened it right there in that office. Earl's handwriting. Shaky but legible. Every letter pressed hard into the paper the way he always wrote, like he wanted the words to outlast the page. "Marshall, you came to see me every month. Not because you wanted something. Not because you were waiting for me to die. You came because you are a good man with a good heart, and that is worth more than any land I own. I am giving you these farms because I know you will take care of them the way you took care of me. But I need to tell you one more thing, and I need you to hear it clearly. Be careful who you share your blessings with. Not everyone who smiles at your fortune is happy for you." I folded that letter and put it in my coat pocket right next to my heart. I thanked Howard, shook his hand, and walked out into the afternoon sun. I drove straight to Derek's house. I do not entirely know why. Maybe I wanted to share the news with my son. Maybe I wanted to see his face. Maybe some part of me, the part that still wanted to believe the best in people, thought this might bring us closer together. I walked through the front door, still in the same suit I had worn to sign the papers, and I said it. "I just came from Earl's lawyer. He left me everything. 3 farms, 450 acres. Derek was sitting on the couch. He looked up from his phone. His eyes went wide. His mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. Jolene was standing in the kitchen doorway holding a glass of white wine. She set the glass down on the counter very slowly, very deliberately, and turned her entire body toward me. "3 farms," she said. "How big? Where exactly are they?" And just like that, her voice changed. It was warmer than I had heard it in years. She walked over, pulled out a dining chair for me, and said, "Here, sit down, Dad. You must be exhausted from the drive." She poured me a glass of water without being asked. She asked if I was hungry. She touched my shoulder as she walked past. Then she said something that hit me right in the center of my chest. "Dad, why do you not stay for dinner tonight?" That was the first time in over 2 years that Jolene had invited me to stay for a meal in their home. I looked at Derek. He was smiling, but his eyes were doing something different. They were calculating. I had never seen that look on my son's face before, and it frightened me more than any of Jolene's coldness ever had. I stayed for dinner. I smiled. I ate. I answered their questions about the farms, the acreage, the buildings. But inside, something had shifted. I kept hearing Earl's words over and over in my head, like a drumbeat. Not everyone who smiles at your fortune is happy for you. I drove home that night in silence, no radio, no music, just the sound of the highway and the weight of what I was beginning to understand. In the weeks that followed, Jolene became a completely different person around me. It was like someone had flipped a switch inside her, and suddenly all the warmth and attention she had been withholding for years came flooding out at once. I was invited to their house every single weekend. Jolene cooked elaborate meals: roast chicken with herb stuffing, grilled salmon with a lemon dill sauce, homemade cornbread served in a cast-iron skillet, which she told me she had learned just for me because Derek had mentioned I loved cornbread. She called me Dad with this new softness in her voice that had not been there before. Every time I arrived, the house smelled like warm food and candle wax, and something that was trying very hard to feel like home. Derek started calling me every single day, sometimes twice. Just checking in, Dad. How are you doing, Dad? Do you need anything, Dad? It was everything I had wanted to hear for the past 2 years. Every phone call, every invitation, every dad felt like water after a long drought. But it also felt wrong, because I knew where it was coming from. Jolene started dropping hints within the first 2 weeks. Subtle at first, planted casually between conversations about the weather and Graham's latest milestones. You know, Dad, those farms are a lot of responsibility for one person to manage alone, especially at your age. Derek and I have been talking, and we would love to help you oversee things. Take some of that burden off your shoulders. I nodded. I said, "That is kind of you. I will think about it." The next weekend, she brought it up again, this time with a different angle. Have you considered setting up a family trust? That way, if anything ever happened to you, God forbid, Graham would be protected. It just makes good financial sense. I said, that is an interesting idea. Let me look into it. 2 weeks after that, she went straight for it. No more wrapping paper, just the blade. Honestly, Dad, the smartest thing you could do right now is put Derek's name on the property titles. It simplifies everything, avoids probate, saves on taxes, and it shows Graham that this family takes care of each other. She said, this family, like she had been a loving part of it all along. Like the past 2 years of cold shoulders and closed doors had never happened. Like the crib in the garage and the pie on the counter and the text message at the cemetery were all just figments of my imagination. I looked at her across that dinner table, and for the first time I did not feel hurt. I felt clarity, but I did not show it. I smiled and said, "You are probably right. Let me talk to a lawyer and see what the best approach would be." That bought me time, and I used every second of it. The first thing I did was drive out to the 3 farms myself. I spent an entire weekend walking the properties, meeting the families who had been leasing the land from Earl. The crop farm was run by a man named Douglas Mercer and his 2 adult sons. Good people. Hard-working. They had been growing soybeans and corn on Earl's land for over a decade and had always paid their lease on time. The cattle ranch was managed by a woman named Patricia Soule, a 4th-generation rancher who knew more about livestock than anyone I had ever met. And the 3rd property, the one with the lake and the farmhouse, was empty. Just the house, the water, the rolling green hills, and a silence so deep you could hear your own thoughts settling. I stood on the porch of that farmhouse, Earl's farmhouse, and I understood why he had loved this place so much. The second thing I did was hire my own attorney. Not Howard Pennington, who was a fine man, but technically Earl's lawyer, not mine. I found a woman named Diane Calloway through a referral from one of Earl's neighbors. Diane was in her mid-50s, sharp-featured, direct-spoken, and she had a reputation for being one of the best estate and asset protection lawyers in the Nashville area. I sat down in her office and told her everything, not just about the farms, about Derek, about Jolene, about the crib and the pie and the monthly visits that were never reciprocated, and the sudden flood of affection that arrived the moment money entered the picture. Diane listened without interruption. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and said, "Marshall, you are not the first person to walk into my office with this story, and unfortunately, you will not be the last. But you are here, and that means you are already ahead of the game. Let us protect what Earl left you." The third thing I did was quieter. I began keeping a mental record of every interaction with Derek and Jolene from that point forward. Every phone call, every visit, every comment about the farms, every suggestion about transferring titles or setting up accounts. I compared it all to the years of silence that came before. The contrast was devastating. Then came Graham's first birthday party. It was the first time in my grandson's life that I had been invited to a family gathering that included people outside the immediate household. Jolene had rented out a section of a country club. White tablecloths, balloon arches, a 3-tier cake, decorated to look like a little barnyard. The irony of that was not lost on me. The place was full of Jolene's friends and colleagues. Women in designer dresses, men in sport coats, everyone holding cocktail glasses and making conversation that floated on the surface of things without ever going deeper. I showed up in my good khakis and a button-down shirt that I had ironed that morning, carrying a wrapped gift for Graham. Jolene greeted me at the door with a hug. That alone should have told me something was off, because she had never hugged me before. Then she walked me around the room, introducing me to people. "This is Derek's father, Marshall. He just inherited a massive amount of farmland outside Nashville. We are so proud of him." That is how she introduced me. Not, "This is Marshall, Derek's father, the man who raised my husband." Not, "This is Graham's grandfather." She introduced me as a man who owned land, my identity reduced to acreage. I smiled through it. I shook hands. I held Graham when he reached for me and kissed the top of his head and tried to just be grateful for the moment. Later in the evening, I went to the kitchen to refill my water glass. The kitchen was separated from the main party area by a swinging door, and as I pushed it open, I heard voices on the other side. 2 women talking. I recognized both of them instantly. Jolene and her mother. "Once he signs the farms over to Derek, we will not need to keep doing this," Jolene said. Her voice was casual, unbothered, like she was discussing a transaction and not the systematic manipulation of a lonely old man. "The old man is easy to handle. A few dinners, a few phone calls, he lights up like a puppy." Her mother laughed. A short, practiced laugh. "Just make sure Derek keeps playing along. He is too soft sometimes." "He will do what I tell him," Jolene said. "He always does." I stood on the other side of that door with my hand still on the handle and my water glass in the other hand. I did not move. I did not breathe. I listened to every word like a man listening to his own verdict being read aloud. Then I stepped back silent as a shadow walked out the side entrance of the country club and sat in my truck in the parking lot for over an hour. I pulled out my wallet and opened it to the small photograph of Linda I keep behind my driver's license. She was laughing in that picture, standing in our old backyard, squinting against the sun. I looked at her face, and I said quietly to no one, and to her at the same time, "I know what I need to do now." I did not make any sudden moves. That is important to understand. I did not storm into their house and confront them. I did not call Derek in a rage. I did not change my phone number or cut off contact. I did exactly the opposite. I kept showing up. I kept smiling. I kept saying, "Let me think about it," every time Jolene mentioned the property titles or the trust or adding Derek's name to anything, because I needed time. And more importantly, I needed them to believe everything was going according to their plan. For 3 months, I played the part. Every Saturday dinner, I was there. Every phone call from Derek, I answered. Every hint from Jolene about the farms, I met with a thoughtful nod and a promise to get around to it soon. Meanwhile, I was working. The first step was with Diane Calloway. Over the course of several meetings, Diane and I established a legally airtight trust, the Marshall Allen Crawford Irrevocable Trust. That is my full name, by the way. Marshall Allen Crawford. Named after my grandfather on my mother's side, who was also a farmer and also a man who believed in doing things the right way, even when the easy way was staring him in the face. All 3 properties were transferred into the trust with the following terms. I, Marshall Allen Crawford, was the sole trustee and sole decision-maker. No property within the trust could be sold, transferred, mortgaged, leased, or encumbered by anyone other than me during my lifetime. Upon my death, the trust assets would be managed by an independent advisory board selected by Diane's firm, not by any family member. The sole beneficiary of the trust would be my grandson Graham, but with conditions. Graham could only access the assets upon reaching the age of 25, and only if he demonstrated financial independence, meaning he could not be living off his parents or dependent on anyone else's income at the time of distribution. Diane reviewed every clause with me twice. "This is solid, Marshall," she said. "Nobody can touch this. Not Derek, not Jolene, not any court in Tennessee without extraordinary cause." I signed the documents on a rainy Wednesday afternoon in November, and I felt something I had not felt in a very long time. Control. The second step was harder. I asked Derek to meet me alone at a coffee shop halfway between our places. No Jolene, just us. He agreed, though I could tell from his voice that Jolene was coaching him in the background. We sat across from each other in a corner booth. Derek ordered a latte. I ordered black coffee. For a few minutes, we talked about nothing. The weather, a football game from the weekend, Graham's new teeth coming in. Then I put my cup down, and I looked my son in the eye. "Derek, I need to talk to you about something, and I need you to just listen." He shifted in his seat. I could see the tension creeping up his jaw. I started from the beginning. I told him about the years after his mother died, how I sold the house, and gave him the money for his down payment without a second thought. I told him about the phone calls that stopped coming, the Thanksgiving pie that nobody touched, the crib I built with my own hands that ended up in his garage next to a box marked for donation. I told him about being shut out of Graham's first weeks of life, about Jolene's comment regarding my apartment, and my job, about Derek standing right there and saying nothing. I told him about the text message I received at Earl's funeral while I was standing next to the casket. And then I told him what I heard in that kitchen at the country club. Every word. Derek's face went white. Not red, not angry. White. The color a person turns when the ground under them gives way and they realize there is nothing solid to grab onto. He started talking fast, the way people do when they know they are caught. "Dad, that is not... I mean, Jolene sometimes says things she does not mean. She was probably just venting to her mom. It was not serious. And I know I have not been around as much as I should, but work has been crazy and the baby takes up so much time and..." I let him finish. I did not interrupt. When he finally ran out of words, I said the thing that had been building inside me for months. "I am not angry, Derek. I am disappointed. There is a difference. Anger goes away. Disappointment from your own son stays. He stared at his coffee cup. He did not look up for a long time. I told him I loved him. I told him I would always love him. But I also told him that love does not mean letting someone use you, and it does not mean staying silent while your own child stands by and watches it happen. Then I stood up, left a 20 on the table, and walked out. 2 weeks later, I hosted a dinner at my apartment. A real one. I invited Derek and Jolene. I also invited Diane Calloway and Howard Pennington. When Derek and Jolene arrived and saw 2 lawyers sitting at my kitchen table, the energy in the room changed immediately. Jolene's smile tightened. Derek looked at me with something close to panic. I served pot roast and roasted vegetables. We ate first. I insisted on that. Because Earl always said you should never discuss serious matters on an empty stomach. After the plates were cleared, I stood up. I asked you all here tonight because I want to be transparent about my plans for the farms Earl left me. Jolene leaned forward slightly. Derek gripped the edge of the table. All 3 properties have been placed in an irrevocable trust, I said. I am the sole trustee. No one else has any authority over these properties during my lifetime. Jolene's jaw tightened. Derek, you will not be receiving any direct inheritance from these farms. Derek looked at the floor. Graham will be the sole beneficiary, but only when he turns 25 and only if he has built a life for himself on his own terms. Those are the conditions. I paused. Then I pulled Earl's letter from my shirt pocket, unfolded it, and read one line out loud. Be careful who you share your blessings with. Not everyone who smiles at your fortune is happy for you. I folded the letter and put it back. Then I looked directly at Jolene. I heard every word you said in that kitchen at the country club. Every single word. The silence in that room was absolute. You could have heard dust settling on the windowsill. Jolene stood up. Her chair scraped against the floor. Her face was flushed, her hands balled into fists at her sides. You are unbelievable, she said. After everything we have done for you, all those dinners, all those visits, and this is how you repay us. I let her finish. Everything you did for me, I said, started the day you found out about the farms, not one day before. She turned to Derek. Are you just going to sit there? Derek did not move. He did not speak. He just sat there with his head bowed like a man who had finally run out of excuses. This dinner is over, I said quietly. You both know the way out. Jolene grabbed her coat and her purse and walked to the door. Derek followed slowly without looking back. The door closed behind them. Howard Pennington and Diane Calloway gathered their files. Diane touched my arm on her way out and said, You did the right thing, Marshall. After they left, I stood at my front door and watched the taillights of Derek's car disappear down the street. I did not cry. I had done enough of that. Instead, I stepped outside onto the small concrete stoop of my apartment, looked up at the night sky, and took the deepest breath I had taken in years. The stars were out. The air was cold and clean, and for the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt like I was standing on solid ground. The months after that dinner were not easy. I want to be honest about that, because I think people sometimes imagine that standing up for yourself feels like victory from the very first moment. It does not. It felt like surgery. Necessary, but painful. For the first few weeks, I second-guessed myself constantly. I would lie awake at 3 a.m, staring at the ceiling of my apartment, replaying the look on Derek's face when I read Earl's letter, wondering if I had gone too far, wondering if there was a gentler way I could have handled it. wondering if I had just lost my son forever. But then I would remember the crib in the garage, the pie on the counter, the text message at the cemetery, the laughter in that kitchen. And the doubt would quiet down, replaced by something steadier. Not anger, not even righteousness. Just a calm, clear understanding that I had done what needed to be done. I started spending more time at Earl's farmhouse, the one with the lake and the rolling hills. I would drive out on Friday afternoons and stay through Sunday. At first, I just walked the property, trying to learn its rhythms, where the morning light hit first, where the deer trails ran along the tree line, where the water in the lake was deepest, which turned out to be near the western bank, where a cluster of old willows dipped their branches into the surface like fingers testing the temperature. I fixed up the farmhouse slowly, replaced the porch boards that had gone soft, painted the kitchen the same pale blue that Earl had always kept it, hung new curtains in the bedroom plain white cotton, the kind Linda used to buy, because she said they let the morning in without trying too hard. I brought a few things from my apartment. A cast iron skillet that had been my mother's. A framed photograph of Linda and me on our wedding day. Earl's letter, which I put in a simple wooden frame and hung above the fireplace. One Saturday morning, while I was out patching a section of fence near the property line, a man walked over from the neighboring farm. Tall, broad-shouldered silver hair, cut close, walking with the careful gait of someone whose knees had seen better days. He introduced himself as Arthur Whitfield, retired Army. 26 years of service, 2 tours overseas, now living on the 40-acre spread next door with his wife, Carol. "You must be Earl's nephew," Arthur said, leaning on the fence post. "He talked about you all the time." "He did," I said, genuinely surprised. "Every time I saw him, Marshall this, Marshall that. That boy drives 3 hours every month just to sit on my porch and drink bad tea." Arthur grinned. His words, not mine. Arthur and I hit it off in a way that surprised me. He was not the kind of man who talked just to fill silence, and neither was I. We started meeting at the fence line most mornings, then gradually moved to his porch, then to mine. Carol would send over biscuits and jam on Saturdays. I started bringing fresh eggs from the small coop I had set up behind the farmhouse. We fished in the lake on early mornings when the mist still hung over the water, neither of us saying much, just casting and reeling and letting the quiet do the talking. It was the first real friendship I had formed in years, maybe decades, and it did not cost me anything except time and honesty, which are the only currencies worth a thing in this life. I also got to know the land itself in a deeper way. Douglas Mercer, the man who leased the crop farm, invited me out to walk the soybean fields during harvest. Patricia Soule at the cattle ranch showed me how she rotated her herds between pastures to keep the grass healthy. I learned about soil pH and livestock genetics and water table levels, subjects I never imagined would matter to me, but that now felt as essential as the plumbing and HVAC systems I had spent my career fixing. I was not just inheriting Earl's land. I was inheriting his life, and for the first time in years, I felt like I had a purpose that belonged entirely to me. 6 months after the dinner at my apartment, my phone rang on a Sunday evening. I was sitting on Earl's porch watching the last light fade over the lake when Derek's name appeared on the screen. I let it ring 4 times before I answered. His voice was different, slower, thinner, like a man who had been hollowed out and was only now beginning to understand the shape of what had been taken from him. "Dad." A pause. "Jolene filed for divorce." I waited. Let him tell it in his own time. He said it had started falling apart almost immediately after the dinner. Once Jolene realized the farms were locked away in a trust she could not reach. The warmth disappeared overnight. The dinners stopped. The phone calls stopped. Everything she had been performing for the past 3 months evaporated like morning dew on hot pavement. Within weeks, they were arguing every night. Jolene accused Derek of failing to secure the inheritance. Derek accused Jolene of never caring about anything but money. The truth that had been buried under all those pleasant smiles and Saturday dinners finally came crawling out into the open, and neither of them could stand the sight of it. Jolene took the house half the savings and moved to a different part of the state. Derek got custody of Graham. He was renting a small place near his office, trying to figure out how to be a single father with a toddler and a broken life. "She was never about us, Dad," Derek said. His voice cracked on the word us. "I should have seen it. I should have listened to you. I should have been there for Uncle Earl's funeral. I should have—" "Come up to the farm this weekend," I said. "Bring Graham." That Saturday, Derek's car pulled up the gravel driveway at Earl's farmhouse just before noon. I was standing on the porch, same place Earl used to stand when he watched me arrive every month. Derek got out first, looking thinner, older, like a man who had aged 5 years in 6 months. He lifted Graham out of the car seat and set him on the grass. Graham was walking now, toddling on unsteady legs, reaching for everything. I walked down the porch steps and picked up my grandson. He grabbed my shirt collar with both fists and pressed his face against my neck, the way small children do when they feel safe without knowing why. I carried him out to the edge of the pasture and pointed at the cattle grazing in the distance. I showed him a red-tailed hawk circling high above the tree line, riding the thermals in wide, lazy loops. Graham pointed at it and made a sound that was almost a word, but not quite. Derek came up behind us. He stood there for a moment watching, and then he said the thing I had been waiting to hear for longer than I can tell you. "I am sorry, Dad, for everything." I turned around. My son's eyes were red. His chin was trembling the way it used to when he was a little boy trying not to cry. I put one arm around him, Graham still perched on my other hip, and I held them both. "We lost some years, son," I said. "Let us not lose any more. I want to be honest with you about healing, because I think people have the wrong idea about how it works. They think it is a moment. A single conversation, a hug, a tearful apology, and then everything is fine. It is not. Healing is slow. It comes and goes. Some mornings I woke up in that farmhouse feeling grateful and whole, and other mornings I woke up angry all over again, not at Derek, not even at Jolene, but at the years I could not get back. The birthdays I spent alone, the milestones I missed, the silence where my son's voice should have been. But you keep going. You put one foot in front of the other. You fix the fence. You feed the chickens. You sit on the porch with a friend who does not need anything from you except your company. And slowly, the bad mornings get fewer, and the good ones start to stack up. Derek started coming to the farm every other weekend. At first it was awkward. We did not know how to talk to each other without the weight of Jolene's shadow hanging between us. But over time, we found our way back. We fished in the lake with Graham sitting between us in the boat, splashing his hands in the water. We cooked dinner together in Earl's kitchen, burning the cornbread the first time and laughing about it. We sat on the porch in the evenings and talked about Linda, about Earl, about the kind of men we wanted to be, and the kind of man we wanted Graham to become. It was not perfect. It never will be. But it was real. And real is enough. I learned something in all of this that I want to leave with you tonight. It is the most important thing I know. Life does not reward you for enduring. Life rewards you for knowing when to stop enduring, for knowing when to stand up, look the people who are using you square in the eye, and say, "Not anymore." Uncle Earl did not just leave me 3 farms. He left me a lesson. He left me the understanding that my worth is not determined by how much I sacrifice for others or by how much pain I can absorb without complaining. My worth is mine. It lives inside me. And nobody, not a greedy daughter-in-law, not a weak-willed son, not a world full of people who only show up when there is something to gain, nobody gets to take that from me. And every morning when I walk out onto that porch and look at those fields stretching out toward the horizon, I think about Earl. I think about Linda. I think about all the years I spent trying to earn love from people who should have given it freely. And I realize the best inheritance Earl left me was not the land. It was the permission to finally put myself first. Now I want to ask you something before you go. Have you ever had someone in your life who only showed up when they needed something from you? Someone who treated you like you were invisible until you had something they wanted? I would love to hear your story. Drop it in the comments below. And if this story meant something to you, if it made you think about your own family or your own boundaries, go ahead and hit that like button. Share it with someone who might need to hear it tonight. And if you have not subscribed yet, now is a good time because there are more stories coming, and each one carries a piece of truth that I think you deserve to hear. Thank you for staying with me through this one. I mean that. Take care of yourselves, protect your peace, and remember, the people who truly love you do not need a reason to show up. They just do.